Persian court had seen many queens, but none like Zenobia. She was more than just a royal consort. She was a warrior queen, strategist, and a woman who knew the dangerous power of beauty. From the moment she entered the empire's throne room, the whispers began. Some called her a temptress, others a living goddess. Every man who gazed at her was struck by her pale skin glowing like ivory, at her long dark hair flowing like a river of midnight, and eyes so piercing that even the most disciplined soldier found himself breaking into sweat. But Zenobia was not satisfied with admiration alone. She wanted dominance, not just over the empire's armies, but over its men, its priests, its politics. She was as comfortable giving orders in the battlefield as she was breaking taboos in the bedroom. And in an era when women were expected to remain hidden behind veils, she shattered every boundary. It began with rumors. Whispers that the Empress did not limit herself to one man, that her hunger stretched beyond the confines of royal marriage. She toyed with courtiers, seduced generals, and left her rivals humiliated not with armies, but with her body. She understood a truth no historian dared to write openly, that flesh could conquer faster than steel. The scandal reached its peak when Zenobia announced something unthinkable. In a world where kings proved themselves with swords and blood, she declared that she would prove herself through an entirely different kind of trial, a public contest of sex and endurance. Men of noble birth, hardened warriors, even foreign envoys would be invited to challenge her. The prize? Glory, infamy, and the claim of having bested the most beautiful and feared woman of the empire. The court was divided. Priests cried blasphemy, accusing her of corrupting the throne with sin. Advisors begged her to abandon the madness. But Zenobia only smiled. That dangerous, intoxicating smile that could turn loyalty into obsession. She declared, "An empire is not ruled by hiding desire, it is ruled by proving power. I will prove mine, before gods and men alike." The announcement spread like wildfire across Persia and beyond. In Rome, senators whispered in disbelief. In Egypt, merchants laughed nervously, unsure if the tale was true. In the taverns of Antioch, drunk soldiers placed bets on how long they could last if given the chance. Everyone wanted to see, everyone wanted to know, was the Empress truly so fearless, so untouchable, so insatiable? As the day of the contest drew near, the palace became the stage for history's most scandalous spectacle. Carpets of silk were rolled out, golden lamps were lit, and musicians tuned their instruments not for war, but for lust. The air itself grew heavy, thick with anticipation and forbidden curiosity. Zenobia prepared herself like a warrior before battle. Her robes were not the modest dresses of queens past. Instead, she chose fabrics so thin they clung to every curve of her body, cut in ways that revealed her chest, her legs, her hips, with brazen confidence. Every jewel she wore only drew the eye further to the softness of her skin. She was not dressing to be admired. She was dressing to destroy the pride of men. And so, the empire watching, Zenobia stepped into the chamber where her name would forever be written in scandal and legend. The night of the contest arrived, and the imperial palace had been transformed into something between a royal feast and a forbidden theater. Long carpets of crimson silk rolled across the marble floors, while golden lamps threw shimmering light across the vaulted ceilings. The audience was not just the noble elite of Persia, but foreign envoys, merchants, generals, and even Roman spies, all desperate to witness what the Empress had promised. At the center stood Zenobia herself, not draped in heavy jewels or battle armor, but in a gown cut so daring it left little to imagination. Her shoulders were bare, her neckline plunging deep, and the fabric clung to her curves with every breath she took. When she stepped forward, every man in the hall straightened. Every woman either gasped in shock or whispered in envy. She was not simply an empress tonight, she was the living embodiment of desire, prepared to test the strength of any man brave enough to face her. The rules were scandalously simple. The contest was not about war, not about wit, but about endurance in the most primal form imaginable. One by one, Warriors would enter the chamber, not to fight with swords, but to prove their manhood against the Empress herself. Whoever lasted the longest in this trial of flesh and stamina would be crowned the victor of Zenobia's scandalous challenge. The crowd held its breath as the first contestant stepped forward. A soldier, his chest bare, muscles rippling with confidence. He knelt before Zenobia, swearing loyalty, but within moments, the chamber saw the truth of her power. She leaned into him, pressed her body close, and the contest began. What followed? It was not a delicate dance, but a raw display of hunger and command. The Empress was not a passive prize. She was a force, taking control, pushing each man to his limits, testing not only his strength, but his pride. The soldier lasted mere minutes before collapsing back in exhaustion. His pride shattered as the crowd erupted in both cheers and laughter. Zenobia smiled, her lips glistening, her body glowing in the lamplight as if she had barely begun to tire. With a wave of her hand, she demanded the next challenger. One after another, men came forward. Noble sons, trained gladiators, even foreign ambassadors who could not resist the temptation of eternal bragging rights, yet none could withstand her. She outlasted them all, her beauty never fading, her breath never faltering. Some men stumbled out of the chamber barely able to walk, others admitted defeat mid-contest. Humiliated in front of the roaring crowd, the scandal of the event grew with each failed challenger. Priests hid their faces, horrified at the open display of lust. But the nobles cheered louder, the soldiers shouted encouragement, and the women whispered with fascination. Some saw Zenobia as a disgrace to the throne, while others saw her as the goddess of passion, untouchable and eternal. But Zenobia was not done. She demanded more. When the strongest generals of Persia stepped forward, she welcomed them with the same relentless hunger. Hours passed, and still she remained on her throne of flesh and power, proving that her endurance was beyond mortal limits. The Roman spies who witnessed this could hardly believe what they saw. They knew Rome had emperors who indulged in excess, but never had an empress dared to make her private desires a public spectacle. To them, this was both shocking and terrifying. For if Zenobia could command men not just in battle but in bed, then her influence over Persia's armies and politics was unlike anything Rome had faced before. By the time dawn broke over the palace, Zenobia had defeated dozens of challengers. Her gown was torn, her body gleamed with sweat, but her eyes burned with victory. Not one man had proven capable of outlasting her. The contest was over. She stood unchallenged, the empress who could conquer with both sword and body. Asterisk when the sun finally set on the day of the contest. The palace no longer felt like a temple of glory, it felt like a battlefield only. The weapons had been different, flesh instead of swords, desire instead of blood. One after another, noblemen, soldiers, and challengers had come forward to face Zenobia in the arena she had created. Some entered with arrogance, boasting they would last the longest, that they would humble the empress. Yet minutes later, they were left collapsed, trembling, broken, not by wounds, but by exhaustion and humiliation. Zenobia stood tall through it all. Her body glistened with sweat, her hair tangled like a warrior's after combat, yet her eyes shone with victory. She laughed, taunted, and pushed her challengers further than they believed possible. It was not just sex, it was conquest. She wanted the empire to see that no man, however strong, however disciplined, could claim control over her. She was the one who commanded. She was the one who devoured by the end. Only whispers filled the chamber, the courtiers who had gathered. In shock, were now silent, their faces pale as if they had witnessed a sacrilege. Some priests fled in disgust, cursing her name, swearing that the gods would strike her down for such defiance. Others, however, stayed rooted in place, unable to look away. Trapped between horror and fascination, the men who had participated were left drained. Crawling back into the shadows of the palace, their pride shattered, none had claimed victory, none had matched her, and this fact alone transformed Zenobia into something more than a queen. She became a living myth. Outside the palace, Story spread like wildfire. In the taverns, soldiers laughed with disbelief, arguing over how many men she had conquered. That day, merchants carried the scandal to distant markets, turning it into whispers of lust wrapped in legend. Even Rome, proud and arrogant, could not ignore it. Senators mocked Persia for allowing such shame, but deep inside, many wondered what it would have been like to face the Empress in her forbidden contest. For Zenobia, this was not just pleasure, it was politics. By breaking the unspoken laws of her time, she carved her name into history. No longer was she just another queen in the line of empires. She became the woman who ruled not through chains, not through armies, but through the raw, undeniable force of desire. Her enemies thought the scandal would destroy her. They believed the priest's outrage, the whispers of sin would topple her throne, but the opposite happened. The people spoke her name with awe,